This is not a silent film. This is how a deaf person perceives the world. It is a world that is solely visual. No noises, no voices, no sounds. My name is Rachel Bear, and I'm 14 years old. I live with my brother Jacob, my sister Sarah, and my parents, Julie and Joey, who are both deaf. My siblings and I are CODAs. CODA is an acronym that stands for Children of Deaf Adults. As CODAs, Jacob, Sarah, and I interact with many deaf people and are involved in the deaf community. The deaf community is big here in the Bay Area, and therefore there is a large CODA community as well. CODA pride is shared in many ways, including through the song-signing talents of Michael Velez and Sherry Hicks in their duo, Half and Half. Let's meet Michael, who will give us an inside look on the lives of CODAs.
Hi, I'm Michael Velez, and I'm proud to be a CODA. Many people don't know what CODAs are, but we are a proud, individual, unique community, and we're here to teach you a lot more about it. As a CODA, I was born and raised using American Sign Language, ASL. It is my first language, and English is my second. Many CODAs are brought up bilingual and use both English and ASL as their mode of communication daily.
Well, at first I was just like, my parents had to teach me ASL or else I couldn't communicate. So it was not really hard because that was the first language I learned instead of talking.
I learned ASL just like how hearing people learn English. I grew up with it.
I don't really remember learning it at all. I just remember growing up knowing both languages. There was no moment where I was like, oh, now I know ASL, now I know English. It was kind of just like I grew up knowing both languages.
Now that I know more than one language, I can feel comfortable with talking and doing ASL, and when communicating with deaf people, it'll still feel comfortable because I know both.
In knowing two languages, for me personally, I prefer to use ASL. And the reason being is that it's my native language. It comes to me very naturally, more so than English. It's what I feel most comfortable in. It's where I think I'm better at it, and I'm able to express myself in many more ways than I could with English.
I prefer to use ASL instead of English because it's the first language I learned, and it's I'm more comfortable with it.
English is the language I use socially, but sign language is the language I use professionally as a sign language interpreter. I don't have a preference, one or the other. I enjoy communicating in both sign language and English, so I'd say it's a toss-up.
I think it depends on the situation, whether I use English or ASL. If I'm with my hearing friends, then obviously I'm going to use English.
But around my brothers are hearing, so I'll talk around them. But as soon as my dad walks in the room, I'll start signing. So it just I don't have a preference. It's just based on my environment, what language I prefer to use.
A lot of my friends they can hear, and none of them really know sign language. But I think I prefer using ASL because I think it's a better way for me to express myself.
As CODAs, sign language is natural for us. We've seen it in our daily lives. But for hearing people, they may have never met a deaf person before. They're not familiar with deaf culture. They're not familiar with sign language. For them, it may be a little bit uncomfortable. And when they first do meet a deaf person, sometimes their reactions are quite varied.
They always ask questions whenever they find out that my parents are deaf, oh, how do they watch TV, or how do they drive?
I'll either get I'm so sorry, or people will just ask a ton of questions. They'll be
can they read Braille? Can they drive? All these questions that are totally off base. It has nothing to do with my parents. It has something to do with just people not knowing the language and what it's like to be bilingual.
Some people will think it's a touchy subject and be oh, sorry, just not even want to bring it up again.
People tend to react
They tend to react surprised because it's just I have good grades and stuff, and they're surprised because most people think that people that are deaf don't really know a lot of things.
There are a lot of stereotypes about deaf people. Many hearing people look at deafness as a disability. They seem to think that you cannot learn or communicate as well as others. But being deaf does not limit you to any of these things. They may be deaf, but they are not silent.
I don't think my parents are truly silent. They do have a voice. Both my parents went to college, they got a good education.
My mom and dad both have very strong personalities.
Deaf does not mean dumb, because my mom, she is very good at math and she teaches me about math.
My dad's so smart. He went to college. He's a computer programmer. My mom got an education. She started her own nonprofit charity for abused women. She's the voice for hundreds of deaf abused women across America. Like, no, my parents definitely are not silent just because they're deaf.
Being a CODA for me is like being a part of a tribe. It is a tribe rich in language and culture. It is a tribe that is deeply rooted in my soul. It is a tribe that I will forever be a part of, and I can't ever let that go.
I am a part of 2 different cultures, both hearing and deaf, and I think that's pretty cool.
Being a CODA means a lot. It gives me an opportunity to honor my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents as well. They're all deaf on my mother's side, so it just gives me that connection to my family and connection directly to my parents. And I'm very proud to be a CODA.
It helps me communicate with not only the hearing world, but also the deaf world.
It's an honor to be a CODA. There's not very many of us. We're such a small community. The deaf community is such that they're very close-knit, and I think the CODAs just take on those traits of being also close-knit. It's just this connection and this bond we make because our parents are deaf or because we have similar experiences. So I'm very proud to be a CODA.
And of course, there are the funny and unique experiences we all have with our deaf parents.
Sometimes my stepdad turns on the radio and starts dancing to it, but one time we turned it on and it was static and he started dancing.
Deaf parents and the deaf community is very close and tight-knit, so when they see each other at social events or activities, they don't want to leave, and there's something that's called like a deaf goodbye. So our parents will say, okay, we're leaving, 5 minutes, we're going to leave. And then 20 minutes later, they still haven't left, and then we're going to leave, yes, just another minute. I'm like, come on, like, yeah, another minute.
Sometimes, I guess just in general, a funny story about my parents being deaf would be if I'm they're trying to tell me to interpret something, but I feel really awkward interpreting it to a waiter. So my mom sometimes likes to send her food back, but I hate doing that. So I'll be like, oh, can we just she wants something a little different. I'll just kind of vaguely, but they can obviously see my mom is very angry about her meal, but I'm just being very calm and oh, please do this. And they can see my mom next to me fuming angry, but I'm just kind of yeah, do this. And then they just look really confused, but it's kind of just life, I guess.
Now and forever, we will always cherish our deaf culture and our identities as CODAs.